Today we're getting into the surprising story behind the naming of America. Have you ever wondered why we have North and South America and not, say, North and South Colombia? I mean, you'd think it would be named after Christopher Columbus, right? He's the guy we always hear about in the history books. Well, the real story is actually a little more complicated than that. And it all boils down to a different Italian explorer, one who saw the world in a totally new way. Okay, so let's meet the man himself, Amerigo Vespucci. His whole story is a mix of exploration, keen observation, and one really big idea.
So to set the scene, we're going all the way back to 1454. That's when Vespucci was born in Florence, Italy. Now, if you know your history, that's right smack in the middle of the Renaissance. It was a time of incredible art, amazing new science, and just this explosion of curiosity about what was out there in the world.
And Vespucci, he wasn't your typical explorer. He had this really unique set of skills. He wasn't just a sailor. No, he was a scholar. He studied physics, astronomy, navigation, and his real passion, cartography, which is just a fancy word for map making. And that whole combination, well, it gave him the perfect toolkit for the age of discovery.
So, cartography. What is that exactly? It's basically the science and the art of making maps. And you've got to remember, back then, most of the world was a giant blank spot on the map. So being able to accurately draw new lands, that was practically a superpower. It was the key to everything: trade, exploration, even just understanding what our planet actually looked like.
Now, with all these skills, Vespucci got involved in getting ships ready for these super long voyages. And, well, eventually, he decided to go on one himself. He set sail, heading west across the Atlantic, right into the great unknown.
Okay, so here's a really crucial piece of the puzzle. At the time, pretty much everyone, and that includes Columbus, was convinced they had just reached the eastern coast of Asia. The Indies. The whole goal was to find a new sea route to get to all the spices and riches of the East.
But as Vespucci started exploring the coast of what we now know as South America, things just weren't adding up. What they expected to find in Asia, based on all the old stories, is on the left. But what Vespucci was actually seeing is on the right. We're talking completely different plants and animals, people with customs no one had ever described before, and a coastline that just kept going. It was massive, way bigger than anyone thought possible. So all of this led Vespucci to a pretty radical conclusion. He realized, wait a minute, this isn't Asia. This was something completely new. In a letter he wrote, he gave it a name, Mundus Novus. That's Latin for the New World. And this wasn't just a guess. He had proof. First, the coastline was just enormous. Second, he saw these gigantic rivers, like the Amazon, dumping so much fresh water into the ocean. He knew that could only come from a huge continent. And get this, he sailed so far south that the stars in the night sky were completely different from the ones he knew back in Europe. He was literally using science and observation to challenge what everyone had believed for centuries. All right, so Vespucci had this groundbreaking idea, but how in the world did his first name, Amerigo, get plastered across two whole continents? Well, the answer involves a brand new invention and, believe it or not, a best-selling author. Turns out, Vespucci was a really good writer. He wrote these super exciting letters about his travels, describing all the strange new places and people he saw. And thanks to a new invention, the printing press, his letters got published and just spread across Europe like wildfire. Seriously, they were like the blockbusters of their time, and it made Vespucci a total celebrity explorer. So here's how it all went down, step by step. First, Vespucci's letters make his New World idea famous. Second, a German mapmaker, a guy named Martin Waldseemüller, reads them and is completely blown away. He's convinced. So third, in 1507, he starts designing this huge updated map of the world. And fourth, when he gets to this new landmass, he decides to name it America, in honor of Amerigo. And that's it, that's the moment. The year 1507 is the first time the name America ever appeared on a map, a new name for a new world. And it all happened because one mapmaker was really inspired by what Vespucci wrote.
But hold on a minute, his name was Amerigo, so why America?
The reason is actually pretty simple. The mapmaker, Waldseemüller, decided to use the feminine version of the name, America, because it matched the names of the other known continents. Think about it. Europa, Asia, Africa. They all had feminine-sounding Latin names. America just fit the pattern.
But Vespucci's legacy is about way more than just getting his name on the map.
So let's do a quick recap of his life. He was born in 1454. He takes his big voyages in the late 1490s. In 1507, the name America appears on that famous map.
Then, in 1508, he lands a huge job, pilot major of Spain. That meant he was in charge of training all the other pilots and keeping the country's official maps up to date. He passed away in 1512, having completely changed how everyone saw the world.
And that's really key. He wasn't just an adventurer, he was a scientist. He was always pushing for better ways to navigate, like using the stars and the moon to figure out a ship's exact location. His work made sea travel so much safer and more accurate for all the sailors who came after him.
Now, it's not a perfectly neat story. History rarely is. To this day, historians still debate some of the details of his voyages. Was he actually the captain on these ships, or more of an observer? Did he maybe exaggerate a little in his famous letters? These are all totally fair questions, and they just go to show you that the past can be pretty complicated. But here's the thing that isn't really up for debate. Amerigo Vespucci was the guy who used science, logic, and his own two eyes to make the case that this was a new world. It was his idea that changed everything, and that idea literally redrew the map of the planet forever.
And that kind of leaves us with a final thought, doesn't it? All these explorers were looking at the very same coastline, but only Vespucci saw it for what it really was. It really makes you wonder, what does it take to see something that's right in front of you that everyone else seems to be missing?